Sekeres and Price from the Wall Center, and this segment, this guest, brought to you by the Whistler Golf Club, that is continuing to get rave reviews this season for the way that it's playing. The Arnold Palmer Design Golf Club wants to remind you that organizers of 12 or more, well, it's not too early to get your September and October buddy or corporate trips all booked up. The prime times are filling up, and it's a great time to play. The snow-capped mountains are starting to return in September, and you, the group organizer, play for free. Tell us about your group at whistlergolf.com/groups. Maybe you want to take a celebrity golfer along with you, like a Ray Ferraro, who joins us here on Sekeres and Price, fighting the wedges. But I'm sure you're going to continue to be a brave soldier and head out on the course and try to figure that out.
Yeah, only twice more this week, and then I got a busy week next week. It's my new job.
That's good.
I just can never get enough. It always should be better. It never is quite good enough, and then you just go and grind away again.
The beauty of the sport, no such thing as a perfect game in that sport. Before we get to the hockey, and there's lots to talk about with regards to the Canucks, explain to us what happened this week with your honor from the Little League World Series. For those that don't know, Ray, when he was a wee lad, looking like son Riley in the photo that's in the Trail Times there, you went to the Little League World Series, which I can only imagine was a bit of an ordeal for a small town like Trail to, get airfare and send you guys to Williamsport and all that sort of stuff. But you're getting bestowed an honor by Williamsport in the Little League World Series. What does it all entail?
Well, so first of all, that trip, it was in 1976, and there's been 5 teams from Trail, unbelievably, that have gone to the World Series. I mean, it's just remarkable. We were incredibly blessed, as all athletic or youth athletics are. Anything that's successful with a coach that is just a special coach, a special person. And in Trail, we had a man named Andy Beliski, who is in the Little League Hall of Fame and was just an amazing teacher and coach and manager for us. Of all the things I've done, honestly, guys, it's one of the highlights of my life. It was just amazing. I'd never been on a plane before. The provincials were in Vancouver. That was a big enough trip, for us to go to Vancouver. And then we flew to Quebec for the Canadian finals. And I'd never been on a plane before. And then we played in Sherbrooke, and we won the Canadian championship, and we had a week off. They took us to Toronto. I'm not really sure why we were there, but we were there for a week, and then we flew to Williamsport. And when you're 12, I don't think you really appreciate, we knew it was cool. I mean, there was a team from Japan next door, and all the US teams were there, but we kind of connected with the Japanese team. And that was in the stretch they won every year. And it was just an amazing, amazing thing. And I look at what's become of it. The series grows every year, the viewership. And so I got a call this year, or earlier in the year, about this honor of excellence. And basically it's for those that have played in the World Series and then have gone on to do whatever, that is, been noteworthy, I guess. And so Megan Duggan is the director of player development with the New Jersey Devils. She's being inducted this year as well, which is really cool. And it's amazing. Something happens and it triggers memories, all these things you've kind of forgotten and about the trip. And I'm back in Trail for a family thing, and I ran into our catcher from that team. And by the way, his name's John Lucchini, and his son Jake just signed with Nashville yesterday.
Right, I didn't know the name, yeah.
Yeah, and so I saw John yesterday, and I'm like, so he was pumped about his son, and then we started talking about the Little League thing, and so it's just been a great surprise. It's been awesome.
It's amazing, cool. Ray. I can't remember what I did earlier this week, and your recall of something that happened at the age of 12. It's amazing.
It is funny that it just takes you back,
yeah,
something like this. And a quick funny story was, so we had to win. We were in the semifinals, and we were down 2-0 in the 6th inning. There's only 6 innings in Little League, and we were playing a team from Chateauguay, Quebec. And I was telling Mitch Melnick, the great radio host in Montreal, of this story on the air. I don't even know why it came up. I said, yeah, and then we scored 3 runs off this left-handed pitcher. I always remember his name was Aaron Nalbandian. Well, somehow Aaron Nalbandian called into the radio show, and we ended up in this 15-minute conversation on the air about the game. He had a no-hitter going in the 6th. We got 3 runs in the 6th inning, and it was like, I'm like, I go, how big are you? Because I remember he was a mammoth 12-year-old. And he goes, well, I'm about 5'11". He must have been about 5'10 3/4 in
He plateaued.
And he threw hard. And we were like, how are we going to get through? We couldn't even get 1 hit. We somehow got 3 runs. So yeah, the memories pop in.
That sounds like it was 2 weeks without your parents too, probably, because I don't think they're traveling to Châteauguay and Williamsport and Toronto and all that.
They came to Williamsport.
Okay.
Dad somehow, there was 5, I remember this, 5 parents somehow made it to Sherbrooke, and Dad was one of them. And I remember because they didn't tell us, I think because they were probably scraping nickels together, honestly, to get there, and it might not work, but the 5 of them made it. And it was the best, because I hadn't been without my parents for like a weekend.
Right. Yeah.
So this was a big deal. Yeah.
Well, speaking of parents, the parent of Jake DeBrusk, and I'm sure I've had some chats with Louis about what his son can bring to the table as a Vancouver Canuck. Our poll question today, can he score 30 next season for the Vancouver Canucks, increased role and all that? What do you think?
I do. I do think he can. I have texted with Louis. Now, Louis used to use his hands in a far different way than Jake uses his. And Louis were for evil and Jake's are for good. And so this is why I think Jake can score 30. I've watched him play a lot. We did a lot of Bruins games at ESPN. And this is not exclusive to Jake and the Bruins. I think this is the way it is when a player is with a team for a long time. The team sees what he's not. Everybody else sees what he is. And so after a while, I would even equate this to Mitch Marner in Toronto. Everybody in Toronto sees what Mitch Marner is not. And I think for a good portion of the people, they've forgotten what he is. Jake's big. He's fast. He's got great hands, like really great hands. And he can play a bit of a power game. I think he got stuck in Boston between 2 different things, the power game and the speed game, and really he kind of lost, in my mind, the best of what he is. And late in the season, he kind of got it back. He skated with more purpose. He drove the net more. He got like in front of the net. Like, he's not what you would call a physical player, but in front of the net, he's really strong. They can't get him out of there. He's got really good hands, scores a lot of goals close to the net. And so I think this will be like a breath of fresh air, because what do the Canucks see? They just signed him for 5 years. They see what he is. They don't see what he isn't. And so now you have a chance with new coaches and new eyes to work on what they want you to work on. And you're going to be playing in a role here that expects and needs offense. And so I think now he had that chance in Boston, but this year, the centermen in Boston, with all due respect, were not Krejci and Bergeron. Those guys, Charlie Coyle and Pavel Zacha, had really good regular seasons, but they're lower down the lineup guys. They should be like Zacha ended up on the wing this year. Coyle's he's best as a number 3. He could probably stretch to a 2, but those guys were playing with David Pastrnak too. So you should get more help from your centerman here in relation to what DeBrusk can do. I don't see why he's not a 30-goal guy, like why that shouldn't be in his sights.
I would imagine that a fair bit of that's going to depend on his centerman. And, I've said all along here, Ray, that no matter what the Canucks did in free agency, the most important thing for them this summer is to get superstar Elias Pettersson back and performing at the levels that he has pretty much throughout his career. But what about the fit? Like, I want to be careful when I say this, but this is more a concept than an idea. We saw Zach Hyman, who had scored at a level, go to a new place, get elevated in the lineup, obviously play with the best player in the world and bust out. I'm not predicting 50 some odd goals for Jake DeBrusk, but if Elias Pettersson does come back and play like he has in the past, could there be a Zach Hyman like bump for Jake DeBrusk being put in every position to succeed here?
Well, there is some similarity there. I mean, it's not like DeBrusk was playing with a bunch of guys that couldn't play either in Boston. Zach Hyman was playing for the most part with Austin Matthews in Toronto. But Matthews and McDavid are far different players because of the generation of chances and how they happen. For Matthews, they end up on his stick and he's shooting it. For McDavid, Hyman was able to position himself to be the receiver. You still got to finish them, because it does piss me off when I hear guys say, well, he's playing with McDavid. And you're like, yeah, well, other guys were playing with McDavid. Why didn't they score 57 goals? Oh, because it's really hard to do. And he was able to do it. The linchpin of all of this, Jeff, as you mentioned, is Pettersson. Like the untapped room from where Pettersson finished the year at last year to what we've seen is mammoth. It's not just the points, it's the way that he played the game. And whether it was through injury or lack of confidence or deteriorating belief, I think all of that kind of plays into when a player slides. It's all of it. It's not just one thing. It's often more than that. And I do think the one thing that DeBrusk can fit well with is he doesn't need the puck. He likes to carry it. He's good when he carries it, but he plays a give and go really well. And I do think that's a strength of Pettersson, is his ability to give up the puck at the right time, to carry it, to make somebody miss, and then to deliver it at the right time. And so I do think there will be more opportunity for him to shoot and to score. And he does shoot the puck really, really well. Like, it comes off his stick and it's quick, and it's I wouldn't say it's heavy, but it's a quick, an explosive release. And so I really do see a nice chemistry. Now, again, the linchpin of it is Pettersson has to come back in a different form than he left with.
Right. Rick Tocchet is so big on systems and structure. Is there value for the Vancouver Canucks in getting a guy who has only played for the Boston Bruins, been to the Stanley Cup final, 86 playoff games on his resume, he's been well coached, Bruce Cassidy, first of all, and then Jim Montgomery? Like, is there some value coming from a really good program to joining the Vancouver Canucks?
The systems will be different. There'll be some variance to them, but I do think at times we get too hung up in hockey about the systematic approach. It's not football, right, where everything is scripted by the yard into, the receiver runs 3 yards, turns right, and the ball's waiting for him. The systems are all, generally speaking, in the ballpark. The tweaks and the nuances to them you have to learn. But the Bruins there has been a Bruins way of doing things for well over a decade. And Jake has stepped into that Bruins way of doing things. And it's regimented's the wrong word, but it is demanded and expected in Boston. And I think that's why, as players have retired, and I think this year was a great example. I think most of us, well, me for sure, felt that the Bruins would take a big step back this year. They went from 132 points 2 years ago to, I don't know what they have, 100 and close to 110 this year. I thought they were going to fall back 40 points, and they didn't. And that is, in large part, the reliance of the Bruins system, the Bruins way. And so coming to this system, to Jake, will not be unfamiliar. There'll be differences, of course there will be. The terminology, the approach maybe on a forecheck or a neutral zone thing, that'll all have to be understood. But the difference is, if you come from a place that is always in churn, is always looking for the better way to do it, it's all new. It's mayhem in your brain trying to figure out what you're supposed to be. I don't think that's going to be the case for him at all. Anything's possible. I don't expect a really slow start for him. I just don't. I expect him to be able to step in and kind of get most of it right away.
It's dangerous to assume or even, get your heart attached to, everybody on the roster setting career highs, because that never happens. But in the
Right.
summer, you've got these rosy views of these new players, and yet I can see why you would hope that a couple of them do get these bumps with the new team. I think Kiefer Sherwood's going to get an increased role. I think Danton Heinen is probably going to get peekaboo views of certainly the middle six, if not the top six. Ray, I mean, do you love these acquisitions in terms of the upside above what would be their averages?
Well, what I like about them is everybody wants they should have signed this guy, they should have signed that guy. People do understand how the salary cap works, right? Like, are we aware of that? Like,
I think so. I think so.
Yeah. Okay. So it would have been nice to add Gensel, and it would have been nice to add Brady Shea, and it would have been nice to add, I don't know, pick another Jonathan Marshall. So you have no money. Like, you have to make it fit. And so what you have to hope is that the players you sign can outkick their contract. And not every year, but one year it might be Nils Höglander from last year. Maybe it's Danton Heinen this year. I've watched Danton Heinen play enough to know that he should be a 40-point guy. He should be a really good penalty killer. He should be able to score a little bit on your second power play. He's fast, he's smart, he's got a good shot. But he always seems to be this guy that doesn't quite get the green light, the free rein. He's a middle six player. And so those guys always get their power play minutes squeezed. They lose, when something's happening in the game and they go down to two lines, they always seem to be just outside of it. They don't get out there with the empty net. And so it limits your production. But he's a legit producer. He really is. And a producer is not a 40-goal guy. That's another world. But I do think in the middle of this lineup, he should give them pop and speed. And that, so I do see, like, I have 40 points in my head when they signed him. That's what I had in my head. Now Kiefer's a bowling ball and looks like he would be like in the first round. I don't know how often I heard his name, but I'm like, oh my God, this guy seems to be everywhere. And I know Andrew Brunette really well. And he really liked Southern. He really liked Sherwood. He really liked him. Like the way he played, like the way he was able to bounce around a little bit, likes the way other people aren't so comfortable around him. And I found as a player, I never really worried about the big tough guys. They didn't bother me, because what were they going to do? Like, they weren't going to fight me. Like, right? I know a game was different. The guys that bothered me were the guys that played with pace and energy and finish checks, because they just make you uncomfortable. Now, I don't know what his offensive upside is. I really couldn't tell you. But what if you're in your 9-10 forward spot, somewhere in there, or 10, 11, 12, and he gets you 10 goals, 12 goals?
That's what he got last year. I mean,
you'd be really happy with that.
Totally.
And the one thing that always gets me, I don't think people understand is, if you say he's a 10 to 12 goal scorer, chances are that means he scores in 12 games.
Correct.
That means, because he's not going to get a bunch of 2-goal games.
Unlikely.
That means in 70 games he doesn't score, or thereabouts. There's a lot of nights where the puck doesn't go in the net. If you look at those types of players and say what we get past 10 goals is gravy, I think you can understand what they can do. But you have to understand they have to understand in those games they don't score, their impact has to be something else. You can't just be a guy filling out a jersey. And so for him, what do you have, 190 hits last year, or 213 hits, whatever? I'm like, I don't even know how you get that many in today's game. But it's physical. It's an uncomfortability on your forecheck. It's a penalty kill. It's a block shot. Like, you've got to contribute outside of the goals. So I with players like that, I don't tend to get too tied up in the offense, because it generally becomes, you look at their card, the back of the hockey card, and the numbers are all the same. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Like, they're all in that range for most of the players like that.
Ray, we've just come through free agency, and then, of course, everybody's got their report cards and the winners and the losers, and nobody starts playing games until October. So we don't know if the Vancouver Canucks are better right now than they were at the start of last season or at the end of the playoffs. Is there a world, though, in which the Vancouver Canucks don't win 50 games and 109 points again, but 44 wins and 102 points, but are a far more balanced, more structured, more playoff-ready type team than the one that went into the playoffs that was missing the star level of Elias Pettersson, that was running Ilya Mikheyev on the top line? Like, is there a world where they can better with fewer points and fewer wins next year?
100%. There are teams that are regular season teams that pile up all kinds of points, and they just don't feel like a playoff winner. And this might sound goofy, but one of them is Carolina. And for the last couple of years, like, you guys know I'm a big baseball fan. They've reminded me of the 1990s Atlanta Braves. Every year, they'd win over 100 games. They had great pitching, great depth. They'd get to the playoffs, and they just didn't have that extra whatever. They won one World Series, and they were the best team through the 90s. And so I do think, Jeff, the premise that you lay out is really possible, in that maybe you, like, first of all, I don't think they can start the way they did last year. I don't, like, that was wild. Like, what do you need? 6 goals? Oh yeah, we'll get 6 goals done. You know, like, whatever you need.
Six was a flow night early on for them. And 8
and then they get to the end of the year, and what I really enjoyed was, this time last year, it was just like, play meaningful games in March. Then by the time we got to March, they weren't winning the right way.
Right.
They were winning, but it wasn't the right way. But you knew that somewhere, the way the offense and the power play dried up, you had to have a realistic view that that's the Achilles heel. And so if you could get more balance through your lineup, of course you'd like to have a 50-goal guy sitting there that you were able to acquire. Like, of course you would. Like, you really would. But the balance that's been added to the lineup, given what's already here, I think you have less distance to travel to be that good playoff team that you're talking about. Last year, it was about, I don't know what they are. They got to build all of it. They've got to, you know, are they going to be, is Tocchet going to be able to get this team to play the way he wants? And how long is that going to take? And by the end of the year, they really looked like and I think we saw in the playoffs, a team nobody really wanted to play. You're not comfortable. And just think of how the margins are in the playoffs. So the Oilers go to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final. Nashville could have beat Vancouver in that first round. They could have beaten them.
Yeah, for sure.
Vancouver could have beaten Edmonton. Edmonton beat Dallas. Like, every one of those teams is able to make a small case that we weren't that far off. Like, do you think Nashville's excited right now?
Oh.
You know, now I think they've got a lot of guys that do the same thing, and they're going to have to, my buddy Bruno's going to have to figure out how to get power play time and puck touches for 3 right-handed guys that like to score goals, that like to stand in the same place. That's his problem. So that's what Nashville's got. Vancouver must think, we think we're better. We think we're deeper. We think we can sustain everything that you're going to have to will yourself through in a season. Dallas probably feels like, man, we were right there. They lose the last game of the series. They gave up 10 shots. They're like, we're not worse than Edmonton. Do you think Edmonton thinks they're better today? Of course they do. Like, it's so tiny, all the margins in this conference. It's pretty cool to watch, really.
It's unfortunate. There's probably 10 great management groups in the NHL. Only one gets to win the Stanley Cup in any given year, but it's nice. I think Canucks fans are appreciative that, you know, the no plan is gone, that even if it doesn't work out, there's no cup hoisted in 10 months time, 11 months time, that there seems to be a method to the madness here. There seems to be a plan at place, and I think that's given some people some optimism as well. Ray, thanks for doing this.
You betcha. Thanks, guys. It was great to catch up, and I do think you're right. Like the plan doesn't always work, but there's got to be a plan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like if you don't have one, you just literally do not have a chance. And you have to have the courage to follow the plan. Yeah, and acknowledge but acknowledge at some point, I might have to make a swerve here because the plan needs a little tweak. But you can't blow it up. Yeah, you can't blow it up halfway and go, hey, let's try this. I do that on a golf course. It never works. It never works. You know what? I'm going to hit this wedge harder. It does not work. Damn it.
My favorite is I'm lined up way too close to the ball. It's okay. I'm still going to hit it.
I'll fix it on the way back.
Yeah, exactly.
What could go wrong?
Thank you, sir. Enjoy your summer. We will touch base sometime soon.
Thanks, Ray.
You guys be well. See you, Jeff. See you, Blake.
Hey, everybody. If you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres and Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.